to the first highlight of the evening. So it's time to formally welcome our guest speaker to the stage. So Raul Caceres. So I'll read Raul official bio, then we'll have a few rapid fire questions, and then I'll hand over to him. So Raul is a recipient of the United Nations Online Volunteer of the Year Award in 2005. He has dedicated his life to utilizing data and digital technologies to propel various social good initiatives. Raul has demonstrated a profound commitment to driving digital transformation and has assumed leadership positions within non-for-profit organizations in Australia and abroad. This includes serving as the Chief Technology Officer for Peace First, a social justice digital startup in Boston, and for Child Fund Australia, a distinguished NGO based in Sydney. He was recognized as one of the top 50 technology leaders in Australia by the CIO Australian magazine in 2021 and 2022. And he currently holds the position of General Manager of Data and Technology at Canteen Australia, an organization providing support to young individuals impacted by cancer. Raul's academic background includes a Bachelor of Engineering from the National University of Colombia, a Master's of Science from University of New South Wales, and postgraduate education from Tufts University and MIT in Boston. Fun fact about Raul, while growing up, he had a goal of visiting more countries than his actual age. And before COVID crashed the party, he already had checked off 52 countries from his list. He's still a few years ahead of the challenge. Wow, well done, Raul. Well done. So welcome and thank you so much again for saying yes to have this conversation, and donating your time to the Mindful CIO community. Thank you.
Thank you, Nat.
So a few rapid fire questions and now I'm hand over to Raul. So full name, and being a Brazilian myself, I feel quite embarrassed that I can't pronounce your name correctly, Raul. So full name, please, correct pronunciation, tell us.
I think, as Nat will know, South Americans, we tend to have too many names, so we remove a couple of the names when we come to countries like Australia. So my full name is Raul Alberto Caceres Castillo, but I use Raul Caceres here in Australia just to keep it easier for people.
Fair enough. City, country that you're born?
So Bogota, Colombia. That's something that people think is that everywhere in Colombia is really hot. Actually, my city is quite cold. It's 3,000 meters above the sea. So the average temperature is 14 degrees. So living now in the Southern Highlands is the closest it gets to back home, my city.
Favorite drink?
One that I've missed from back home, lots of fresh fruit juices. So you always get a fresh fruit juice after every meal. So that I miss, yeah.
Oh, favorite dessert?
Not too big with the sweets, but I really like banana bread. The one that I make at home, actually, for the kids. So it doesn't have a lot of sugar.
Oh, and favorite city, having visited so many countries, Raul?
I was thinking about that one for a while, but from the ones I've lived in, I really enjoyed living in Numia in New Caledonia. I was there for almost a year, and it's just a paradise. It's not a bad place to have a 1-year assignment, to be honest.
Right. And how do you keep yourself fit physically and mentally? What do you do for self-care?
I think apart from playing with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old all the time, so to be able to do my own exercise, I do have to wake up before 5 o'clock to be able to get a run or a swing early in the morning before the kids wake up. So I try to get at least 4 or 5 days of either a swim or a run in the morning.
Cool. And if you're not working the tech space, what would you be doing?
So before changing careers, I work in the manufacturing industry. So I think I really enjoyed particularly product development and process improvement. So some of my jobs were related to that, and I think there's not so different to what I do now, but I really like those two areas. But I used to do it in the food industry, so companies like Nestle, Kellogg's, and the such. So that part was really fun.
Cool. And very last one, a fun fact or something that we cannot find in your LinkedIn profile.
I do love yoga as well. So I think that one of the reasons why the mindful CIO topic really attracted me. I think whenever I get a chance, I try to put a bit of time to do a bit of yoga, and whenever I'm feeling a bit stressed or need a bit of a stretch.
Excellent. Thanks, Raul. So, sorry, my apologies. Let's move to the next segment, which is you taking charge. So I do have your slides, Raul. Would you like to we should have actually checked this before.
I have them ready to go here, so I can,
Yes.
if you give me the permission, I can.
Yes, that's what I was trying to do. And then, okay, I think now you should have access to. Let's give it a go.
Second.
Yep, something's coming up. Yeah, wonderful.
All right. So as Nat mentioned, the topic of we wanted to share today was the tech for good, so nonprofits, CIOs, humanitarian lens. And I thought what I'll do, which usually find that people are interested in how I got into this space after working for a while as an engineer in the private sector. But I think last year Nat and I did some work, and I think we thought it would be really good to share some of the work that I've been doing over the last 20 years, and particularly how I got to move from being a volunteer to actually being able to do this full time in a paid way. So I was born in Colombia in the late 70s. I think back then Colombia was going through a really rough period. So I think most people would remember in the 90s and early 2000s, a lot of issues with the narco traffic, with bombing, with kidnapping. So some of those things really touched my family very, very close. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of what happened with myself, as with a lot of my colleagues from uni, is that we all tried to get a degree that will give us opportunities to go elsewhere. And I was very fortunate that when I came to Australia with a student visa, back then the government offered me to consider staying on a skill migration visa, and it was an opportunity that I couldn't reject. I thought I would stay for a year only, so I think I was very surprised when I heard directly from the migration office asking me to consider applying for a skill migration visa. So back then it was a really simple process for someone with a degree, like an engineering degree like myself. But I always kept wondering, there has to be more I could do with my skills. So I started contacting a few organizations, including the online volunteering service from the United Nations, and they told me that back then they were piloting some new ways of volunteering. So this is back in 2004, and they put me in touch with a community in Sierra Leone. So this is the first photo, and one of the first photos I got from the community. So I was talking to this lady on the left called Mariama. She was telling me the story about her and her community coming back to Sierra Leone after the end of the civil war. So they were in a refugee camp in Liberia, in the border with Sierra Leone, and after the civil war ended, they wanted to come back, and they had an idea about starting a beekeeping enterprise, but they had no idea how to do it, and they felt that the only thing they could do was to try and raise money. And back then, she was trying to look for someone to donate $50,000, and obviously I was still relatively recently graduated from uni, and I had no idea how to do any fundraising. So I felt there's really no way I can help in a project like this with just fundraising. But I felt that using my skills in the food industry and sort of trying to think about ways to bring other people across, we could maybe come up with some new ideas on how to do it. So the first thing I did was to try and bring volunteers from different parts of the world. So we started doing all of this in an online environment. So I was living in New Caledonia at that point, and I started bringing volunteers. So we have some people from the US, some people from Europe, and some people from Africa as well. So doing everything from doing research on beekeeping, trying to understand what sort of organizations could give us some different types of support. And after lots of discussions with Mariama as well, which back then she was only able to come online to talk to us like once a week for about a couple of hours by going to an internet cafe a couple of hours from her community. And so it was a real journey every time that she did that. And sometimes it was down, sometimes there was no internet. So communication was really difficult. But we came up with the idea of doing a beekeeping school. And to set up the beekeeping school, we were only going to need $1,500 back then, which was a much easier amount of money for us to raise that compared to the $50,000 that they were initially being asked by a company to provide everything ready to go. So we basically went through how do we build the suits for them to be able to collect the honey, how do they separate the honey from the hives, how to build the hives locally. And the project started growing very quickly. And because it was a project that started through the United Nations Online Volunteering Service. The project received an award back then in 2005, and that was the thing that started opening a lot of doors for me. So they got a lot of organizations getting in touch, asking me how did we manage to bring on people online to create this kind of projects. So imagine this is before Facebook, before Twitter, before a lot of the social media platforms were as popular as they are today, and that gave me the opportunity to visit the community. So that was, imagine, the most amazing experience traveling for 3 days. It was like Sydney, Singapore, London, Ghana. So there was a whole journey because back then there was only one airline that was able to travel to Freetown because it was still recently after the Civil War. Not many airlines wanted to travel to Sierra Leone. And then once I was in Sierra Leone traveling for another couple of days to be able to get to this community, which was in a very remote area on the southwest of the country. It was definitely a journey, but arriving there and getting like hundreds of people welcoming me and sort of just sharing with me how much of a difference we were able to make. And I think something that was really interesting was because the volunteers were online, then the community was the one that was implementing the projects. So back then I also sort of started seeing how they were not only doing the beekeeping project, but they had already started doing some other projects themselves without having to ask support from the online community. And it started giving me a lot of ideas about how do we continue using this kind of approach to help communities in other places. And then I started talking to more organizations that wanted to learn about how do we use technology for good. So definitely very early in the space of tech for good back then. So slowly I started getting some consultancy opportunities to work with smaller non-for-profits, and I started getting a couple of other roles. So I started doing some similar projects with other communities. So again, bringing online volunteers, trying to understand a challenge, and then trying to find ways to solve that challenge in creative ways. This is a community in Southeast Asia. So the challenge in this community, sorry, Nadia, where you wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight because this is all of this on top of your day job, right? Because I think you're going to talk about the book later. I don't want to spoil Raul, but maybe just good to highlight. I think that's probably clear that this is everything. All of what you describe is actually as a side project, right, on top of your day job.
Yeah, at the very beginning, that was basically working like my full day job in the factory, and then coming home at night and talking to these volunteers from all over the world and contacting organizations and a bunch of other things. But slowly, I think back in 2008, that's when I decided to give myself, not back in 2006, I think I decided to give myself 2 years to figure out a way to make this a paying thing. So by 2008, I finally was able to sort of feel like, okay, I was about to run out of savings. And finally, I found an opportunity where an organization back in Australia was ready to sort of take a little bit more of a risk and say, okay, let's start developing some online support services. And back then was also a cancer charity. We were working to develop online support services for people impacted by cancer, particularly young people that were feeling like they either didn't have face-to-face services because they were living in regional areas of Australia, or people with some very specific cancer diagnosis that it was very hard for them to find people with a similar diagnosis or a similar challenge geographically near where they were. So we're sort of bringing a combination of different online support services, including online events, private online groups, open groups. So giving up people different opportunities to also use online environments to connect with other people and receive that type of peer-to-peer support, which sort of I've been sort of doing a bit of research throughout the last 20 years as well into how those online communities could work in different ways to provide the type of support that's needed depending on the type of issue that we're trying to address or the type of community we're trying to support. But yeah, most of the beginning of my career was definitely more focused on the international development space. So this community in particular, I felt this project was a really good example because they had a really, like, the year was sort of divided into two. So the rainy part where everything got flooded, and then the dry season, the second half of the year where it didn't rain for a long period of time. And it's quite hard for communities like this to build the infrastructure to be able to store the water from the rainy season and be able to keep it during the dry season. But again, I just sort of bringing the people online and trying to exchange ideas. One person mentioned that they had heard about a project in Peru, in South America, where people were collecting water from the clouds, from the fog. And then we found out that this area was really foggy during the dry season. So even though there was no rain, it was really foggy. And we tried to develop these fog traps. So the idea was that during the night, the fog will be trapped in these fog traps, and then the water will be able to condensate and come into some little containers that we have here at the bottom. And then the first night that we tested them, this is all like this young person here he's blonde. He was our online facilitator, and this was a volunteer that we were able to contact in France to travel to Laos to be able to teach the young people or to be able to use the plants, because he was not an expert in that either. We basically sent him the plants, and he just said, I have time and I'm now retired. I would love to come and be able to help the group build these based on the plans that we found online. And then they build it, and then the next day we heard on the online community we were working in that every single container that they had placed in each of the traps was completely full. So we actually had to adapt the design to make the containers bigger so that they could collect all of the water that was being collected from the fog. So that was a really cool project. Or this other project that was the young people. The challenge, we always did this project by first asking young people what are the key project or key issue that you want to solve, and an issue that you think you can make an impact in. So they said one of the biggest issues they had was that the school was very far. So the closest school they had was about an hour and a bit away from them, and they had to walk every day both ways. So a couple of hours every day just walking in the mountains to get them to and from school. And then usually the traditional method will be to let's build a school and let's raise lots of funds, and then the young people are just spectators of the process. But again, just working in the online community, we sort of heard that they had some local bamboo that was growing, and someone came out with the idea, why don't we investigate if the local bamboo is suitable to build bamboo bikes? And then we went through the whole process again. So found someone who could come and teach them, analyze the local bamboo. So an expert in bamboo just sort of said, yep, these are the characteristics that we need to look for in the bamboo locally. This is how we need to prepare the bamboo. This is how we need to stick the different parts together. And then we were able, after a few months, to build the first round of bamboo bikes. And they were also able to create like a workshop. So they will be able to not only to build them, those bicycles moving forward, but also to repair them so that they didn't have to rely on other people to do the repair process either. And then they were able to then reduce the time of travel from a couple of hours every day to about 30 minutes or 15 minutes each way, because they had the bicycles to get to and from school. But again, it's just bringing a group of people in an online environment coming together to think about how to solve a particular issue where they can make a direct impact. Sort of moving forward to what I do nowadays, I think working in the non-for-profit space, something that happens as a tech leader is that you have to learn a little bit about lots of different things. It's not like what happens if you're in a huge company and with lots of resources where you just learn the one thing and you get really good at it and you can just stay in your line in sort of organizations like Canteen Australia and in some of the other organizations I work for. You really need to try and expand what you do as much as you can so that we can take those resources as far as possible. So a couple of examples on what we do there. So we've been doing a little bit of machine learning to help us predict the income from our regular giving program. So donors that that give us the same amount every month. And what we do is we try to use different algorithms to try and predict the attrition of the donors, so we can sort of calculate based on our forecast of how many new donors will bring, how much money we're going to acquire, because the historical data helps us predict the attrition. We also continue working in the space of online communities. So we have one of the largest online communities to support young people impacted by cancer in the world, and we've actually started partnering with other organizations that want to join the community. And so we've basically been turning this into a bit of a SaaS offering, and now we have young people also coming from New Zealand, and later in the year we'll also have young people joining from the UK, so that we can have young people from all three countries working and talking together and being able to support each other at the same time. We also do a little bit of AI for safety. So we leverage some models that do text analysis to help us understand what something that's being posted shouldn't be posted, and then that sort of raises an automated flag. And we're doing a little bit of graph analysis as well to try and understand how young people are interacting with each other in the community, which helps us work with our services team to improve the way that our clinicians interact with the young people in the community. We also try to make the whole process of intake digital. So that's something that we've been working on over the last couple of years, and then helping clinicians with all these other tools just to make it easier for young people. It's interesting, what we noticed was, for an example, that when young people had to contact the clinicians directly to cancel an appointment, they were not so comfortable just calling or even sending an email. So with our no-show rate was really high. So we decided to then implement some scheduling tools so they could do the whole process just with text messages. And that basically meant that most young people were actually showing up to their appointments, so they were able to cancel it through the text messages, and that meant that we were able to utilize the time from the clinicians much more effectively. So a few examples of how we use technology. And then lastly, we also have the telepresence robots. So young people that are going through treatment and have to stay at home or in hospital, and they cannot come face to face to school, we actually give them a little robot that they can manage from their home, so they can drive it around their school, they can take it to recess, and then that helps them feel they're still connected with their friends at school while they're going through treatment, to at least try and make their experience a little bit more comfortable, then they feel that they're still connected with all of their friends. And we're also exploring online gaming as an intervention. So something interesting is for young males in particular, that they find it really hard to ask for help when they're going through a cancer diagnosis, or someone close to them is going through a cancer diagnosis. What we found was that trying to have online gaming activities was a much better tool to attract young people. So my team helps the services team as well, trying to set up different ways for us to attract some of the young people that do not come to us in other ways. And just to finish, I wanted to do a little bit of a reflection on the manifesto and how I see that line up in some of the work that we do at Canteen. So particularly the diversity, humanity, and sustainability. I think in relation to humanity and empathy, a couple of the things that came to mind were, so beyond the tech. So really, when I've joined any non-for-profit, most of the non-for-profits I join are usually initially just looking for someone to look after traditional IT. But what I've been trying to do in every organization I work for is to try and share with the CEO of the organization a wider vision about how data and tech can have a more direct impact in the lives of the beneficiaries that the organization is trying to serve. And that has been very useful in trying to develop digital services, trying to look at ways to use data, trying to use resources a little bit better. Again, really trying to bring this user-centric approach with everything we do. So we now do a lot of digital design sessions with the young people that receive our services. But before we put any new feature into our online community, as an example, we'll have a session with a group of young people and trying to understand a little bit better how they experience the online community and what are the ways in how we can make it better for them. And then we also try to expand beyond the tech when we think about how some of the systems that we create are impacting all of the different areas of the organization. So we came up with this idea of the product review committees, and we try to bring cross-disciplinary teams. So basically, for example, for our digital services community, we have people from research, we have people from marketing, we have people from services, and everyone has an input into what we think we should be doing in terms of the product, combining it with the input from the young people. So really thinking about how we make everything we do with the tech a little bit more human. Then in terms of on sustainability, I really think from us using tech, we try to look at ways to use resources more efficiently. I think one, even pre-COVID, we were doing a lot of work to improve all of our video conferencing facilities so that we could reduce all of the travel and try to reduce our environmental footprint. And we also started bringing a little bit of visualization to some of the consumption of energy and water across all of our different locations, just to bring a little bit of awareness, which we noticed helped the organization reduce the consumption in some of those. And then finally, around diversity and inclusion, I'm really committed to ensuring that my teams are as diverse as I can. So I think one of the things that has been very important for me is to ensure that we can provide the flexibility that's very important for some of the people that couldn't access the type of roles that we offer if we didn't give that flexibility. So what we find is that we attract a lot of people that usually wouldn't be able to work. So for example, not caring about where they're based in Australia. Also, if someone has small kids and they just want to work from like 8 to 3, and then they want to go and spend time with the kids and then do a little bit of work late at night, that's also completely fine for us. And what we found is that the retention in my team is the highest across the whole organization. And in average, even with the tough tech market over the last few years, the average tenure in my team is already coming up to about 3 years in a team of 14 people. So that's been really good for us to see. Then also, some of the work that I've been doing with the rest of the organization is to get a lot better at how we collect data for diversity and inclusion. We've been doing some work to try what are the best practices in terms of what we ask to understand better both the communities that we serve, but also the staff that comes to the organization. And that I believe that really helps us provide better services to the young people that we're trying to serve, as well as improving how we attract some of the community that are a little bit harder to attract for different reasons. And at the end of the day, it's really the team that I work with, they're the ones that are doing pretty much all of the work. So if I wasn't able to have such a strong team and being able to really live through all of the different elements of the manifesto, I think we wouldn't be able to do the type of work that we do, because we do have to sacrifice a little bit of the pay in the non-for-profit. So we need to bring other elements to be able to attract the type of talent that we are able to bring to the team. And as Nat mentioned, so I do have a book that's coming sometime next year, I hope. So I think Nat was helping me last year to go through some of the planning to make this happen. And I think every time I've shared my story over the last 10, 15 years of how we've been using tech for good, people have always been telling me, oh, you should just put all these stories into a book, because there's a lot more stories about sort of examples that I've been able to be part of, like really cool stories of how technology has been used for some of these initiatives. And I've decided to put all of these into a book, and a little bit of a combination of the projects and then a little bit of how to, and see if we can inspire some people to use some of those ideas in their own community. So not coming too soon, but sometime next year. So keep your eyes out for that in 2024. Thank you.